Hello, and welcome back to the Kalopsia podcast. I'm your host, Sydney, and I'm so thankful that you guys clicked on this week's episode. So this week, I wanted to discuss stopping standing in your own way. Now, I want to start off today with a little anecdote, right? And this is not to be vain, right? But this is something that happened, and it kind of led me to think about this topic. And that is that when I was in my Uber ride to the airport, I just recently went on a little weekend trip, the Uber driver turned to me and he goes, "Do you happen to work with your voice, or do you do anything with your voice, like related to your voice? You know, I typically have a lot of trouble distinguishing American accents and American voices, but yours sounds familiar. Like, do you do anything with your voice?" And I was like, well, I mean, yeah, I guess, like, I do this podcast thing, this little gig that I do. And he was like, wow, like, maybe I've heard it from there. Like, yeah, definitely, because I don't recognize people's voices, but yours really sounds familiar. I was like, oh, wow, like, that's pretty crazy. He's like, oh my goodness, I met a celebrity. And I was like, oh, I'm not a celebrity. He was like, well, a celebrity to me. He said it in a tone that kind of took me aback, right? He said it in a tone that was almost, this is my experience. Like, I'm saying I met a celebrity. My reaction, my dismissal was kind of like, oh, to him, right? He was like, no, it doesn't matter if you don't consider yourself a celebrity, but I feel like I met a celebrity. And it kind of made me realize a couple things. Number one, a celebrity status is dependent on its audience. A lot of the time, they might not recognize their allure, their effect, right? And a couple examples of this are a campus celebrity. You know, think back to your college days, if you went to college, or if you have a town celebrity, right? Maybe it's somebody that you and your friends, you and your circle, you and your roommates have a kind of celebrity-like attraction to, because it's like, wow, we saw them again, we saw them again, we saw them again. I feel like that was something that happened to me on campus. I had a couple campus celebrities. It's like, how do we constantly see these people out of these tens of thousands of people? We keep seeing this one individual. And so they might not see themselves as a celebrity. They might not internalize their effect on others and how noticeable they are, but to us, they were a campus celebrity. To us, they are our town, our neighborhood celebrity. And so a celebrity status, a celebrity perception or standing is really dependent on its audience. The other thing about this, like I just mentioned, is that his tone kind of made me realize how, in diminishing myself, I was also diminishing his experience. And this is a very, very light example that I am exacerbating as well for the lesson here. I mean, I'm not saying that I am a crazy celebrity and I'm just trying to be so humble. Not at all. That's not what I'm trying to say here. But I do feel like his tone kind of gave away that, you know, no, listen, it doesn't matter if you don't consider yourself a celebrity. Like, it's fun to me. It's fun for me to have recognized this voice when I don't typically recognize voices. And it was his experience with or without my understanding of how he was feeling about it. And so that was the other side of it. And it made me realize that in dismissing myself and dismissing the fact that, you know, I could be this quote unquote celebrity, whether or not he even really knew who I was or he mixed me up with someone else, and immediately going, oh, I'm not a celebrity. I'm doing a few different things. Number one, I am telling him that I don't consider myself a celebrity. I'm telling him that I don't believe that I'm someone worthy of recognition, worthy of being recognized. I am telling him that I am not worth, you know, a fan base or having fans or anything like that. Like, I'm not worth that. But I'm also telling the universe the same thing. I'm telling the universe that I'm not ready to accept compliments. I'm telling the universe I'm not ready to attract attention. I'm telling the universe that I'm not ready to reach that celebrity status. I'm not ready for it because I'm immediately rejecting it the second it's presented to me. And so I was immediately like, Sydney, whoa, maybe you shouldn't have said that. Maybe you shouldn't have immediately negated it. Maybe I should learn to take a compliment and stop standing in my own way. But I feel like standing in our own way is something that is such a common thing that we do because we're being humble, we're trying to be humble, or it's also something that we do subconsciously. And we kind of talked about it in the self-sabotaging episode, but this kind of anecdote for me, or this kind of instance that happened kind of made me think broader into how we are really standing in our own ways when it comes to our mindset. And one of the greatest, most common experiences that we all deal with is the broke mindset, especially at least in my age group, early 20s, late teens, mid to late 20s as well. We are often broke. We do consider ourselves broke a lot of the time. If you haven't, found your forever career that's going to earn you six figures, you didn't start a business yet, a lot of the time we're kind of in this broke mindset, right? But I stumbled upon this TikTok of this girl saying, or this woman saying, what's the best part for you about being broke? And what's the best part about having money? And I was immediately taken aback by the form of that question. What is your favorite part about being broke? And I thought it was so interesting for that to even be a question at all, because not only does it point to the aspect that we could potentially find something positive in this brokehood or this brokenness that we have, but it's also telling us, okay, am I aware that maybe I am enjoying a certain part of this? Am I aware that maybe I have a certain affinity for this reality? Maybe I have an affinity for this circumstance that I have in myself. And so when she was saying this, it really woke me up. I was like, okay, wait a minute. What do we stand to gain from being broke? What do we stand to gain from remaining in our circumstances? Now, the first thing that comes to mind is we don't have to change. It's more comfortable to remain in your circumstances, growing pains. It's always going to be more difficult to take a leap, maybe quit your job, do something different. It's going to be difficult and it's going to be scary to maybe start a job that you have no experience in. It's always more comfortable and more safe for your mental stability and your cortisol levels to remain in what you know and to keep doing what you know in that comfort zone, right? So that's number one. That's one side of it, right? But the other thing that we stand to gain from our brokenness, right, is maybe pity. It's maybe handouts. It's maybe attention. There are other aspects to being broke that we could subconsciously actually be attached to. And when I did a little bit more research onto this, I stumbled upon an article by the Silver magazine, and they had this author, Agnes Wanja, and the title of the article was Poverty Mindset. Are you addicted to being broke? Let's fix it. Now, in this book by Agnes Wanja, she does note that this doesn't only extend to poverty. It doesn't only extend to being broke or having this story of being broke. This expands far beyond that. But I feel like it's a bigger umbrella and it's a nice metaphor or example or a scapegoat for what we are wanting to talk about here, right? So Agnes Wanja was actually the author of a best-selling book called Addicted to Being Broke. And a quote that I really enjoyed from this article is the following: poverty on its own has its own meaning as sometimes out of one's control. When linked with mindset, it opens up a new window of one's control or choice. Recognizing the mindset is the first step. You have to acknowledge it's there and it's holding you back. Replace negative thoughts with positive ones. Remind yourself daily of your worth and potential. Now, something that she is telling us here is how the poverty mindset, this attachment or affinity for being broke, is not only an example and proof that our limiting beliefs have taken root, right? If we really believe that this is all that we're capable of, we're not going to be able to make an amount of money that is over this. I'm always going to be suffering, or I'm always going to be struggling with my money. This is just kind of the way it is. And, your environment keeps reflecting that back to you. You continue to struggle day in and day out. It becomes part of your mindset. It becomes part of your identity. And I think that's where it becomes most difficult to come out of. It becomes more difficult to step out of your own way, just because you are seeing your environment. You are seeing proof of what you resent, what you hate. And so you are even further attaching yourself into that. And that actually will lead into something far more dangerous, which becomes resentment. The key to climbing out of this poverty mindset or this lacking mindset, being in lack, feeling like you will always be in lack, is that you need to surround yourself with people who don't think that way. You need to surround yourself with people who feel like they see your capacity for growth. They themselves hold themselves to an expectation for growth. They know that they can grow. They want to see their people grow. Being surrounded by people like that is going to help pull you out of that cycle of feeling like you are in lack, whether that be a lack of talent, a lack of monetary possessions, a lack of value. It's important for your surroundings and your community to reflect what you cannot see for yourself sometimes. What we will sometimes notice when it comes to successful people, successful business people, successful people in friendship, is that they are surrounded by other successful people. You will not grow, see your growth, or even notice your capacity for growth if you are not surrounded by people who also see it for you and see it for themselves. If you are surrounded by people who have low self-esteem, see themselves in lack as well, see their lives in lack, are attached to their victimhood, are attached to their, anger and bitterness, and have a lot of resentment, that is not going to fuel your personal growth. And if you yourself feel like you are riddled with those emotions, is anybody around you kind of fueling that? Is anybody around you thinking similarly? Maybe that's something to think about. The thing about resentment is that it's an excuse for inaction. When you think about resentment, the Cleveland Clinic defines it as: resentment can be described as a complex, multi-layered emotional reaction to being mistreated or wronged by another person, situation, or series of circumstances. Often, resentment feels like a merging of anger, bitterness, and disgust and disappointment and disapproval towards the person or events that have led to your perspective. So really what resentment is doing is that it's a negative thinking loop. It's a negative mindset loop that is keeping you rooted in the past, keeping you rooted in all that is wrong in your life. And so you are incapable of not only seeing your potential for growth, seeing the pivots and the possibilities that you can have that will actually take you out of your circumstances. I'll give you an example. For the past 6 months, or for the first 6 months, first 4 months of this year, I only had one job, and I had previously gone from working 2 jobs. Yeah, I was working 2 jobs for over a year. Sometimes I'd work 7 days a week, 6 days a week. I was like, you know what? I can't do it. I have to have a couple days off a week. I'm going to drop this other service industry job. I'm going to drop that, and then I'm just going to work on this other thing. And I had told myself, I'm not going to go back into the service industry. That's enough of that. I did that for 5 years, 4 years. That's enough of that. I just want to do something else. And for the first 4 months of the year, I was quote unquote broke. I wasn't making disposable income. I was basically living paycheck to paycheck, no trips planned, no nothing planned. I couldn't really shop, things that happen when you don't have disposable income, right? And instead of picking up another job, I was just kind of rocking with the brokenness. I was like, you know what? That's fine. This is kind of what it's like right now. I know it's not my forever. So it didn't kind of riddle me with this anger or bitterness. But the key here is that because I wasn't resenting my circumstances, because I wasn't resenting the fact that I had no money, I can't go on a trip, I can't go buy a new bag, I can't buy new shoes. Instead of thinking about whatever I couldn't do, I was instead thinking, you know what, I've got my entire weekend to myself. What am I going to do with it? Maybe I'll read for 3 hours. Maybe I'll go on a really, really long walk. Maybe I'll sleep in. Maybe I'll cook. Maybe I'll bake. Time is money. Time is energy. I was so happy to have time. Time was the best. That was the best thing I could have had. So instead of thinking about everything I was lacking, I was thinking about everything I was gaining. And then when I was thinking about other things I wanted to buy, maybe I wanted to book a trip, I was like, you know what? I didn't want to go back into the service industry, but it is still an option. Yes, I said I was never going to go back into the service industry, but I'm still young. I want money. How do you get money? You get a job. And so I got a job. And that's what you can do. You can just find other ways to alleviate your circumstances. This is different if you are living in a household, if it's something to do with your people that you're surrounded with that you cannot escape. I know somebody had once commented on a video saying, how do I form this distance if I'm living with this person and it's really difficult in this way? I feel like that can be a circumstance in which it is so easy to have that resentment build and build and build and build and build. But the thing about resentment, like I said, is that it is an excuse for a lack of action. Can you make a plan? Can you give yourself an end time for when you are going to have to remain in that circumstance? If you are living with people that you have a really bad relationship with and it's not a fun time and you feel yourself being angry and bitter and all of this, can you get a new lease? Can you move out at a certain point? If you can't move out, if you don't have enough money, can you get a job that's going to give you that freedom to then move out, to then find that separation? It's all about your control and your level of control in the situation. Like Agnes Wanja was saying, it comes down to that control. When you are in that self-sabotaging mindset, when you are in that resenting mindset, when you are in that lacking mindset, that poverty mindset, you give away your control and you almost are tying your hands behind your back, standing in your own way of finding your way out of it. And you're just saying, damn, this sucks. This sucks, and you're just saying this sucks, and you're going to stay with this sucks, right? And I realize this is a little bit brutal advice. Some people, this is something I dealt with in my personal life. Some people just like to rant and just sit with that emotion and just say, like, this is what I'm dealing with. It sucks, and that's just what it is. I'm like, let's find a solution. Let's find a way out of it. What can we do? What can you pivot? Can you shift this here? Can you drop a day here? Can you pick up a shift here? Can you find a solution? Find an action plan. Find a routine. Find a way to get yourself out of it that will give you back the control and that will allow you to let go of that resentment. Because resentment is dangerous because it will affect your mental health. It will just add to your stress, add to your anxiety. It could even lead to depression. There is also the aspect of how it will impact your relationships. Maybe you have a harder time feeling empathy for others. Maybe you are escaping communication. There's a lack of communication there. The relationship will suffer. Not to mention that it is completely conducive to stagnation. If you are constantly in that cycle of negativity, thinking about your past, thinking about your circumstances, thinking about how, well, I'm never going to get out of this, you're never going to get out of it because you are spending all of your energy, every single ounce of energy, into fueling this negativity and into fueling this story that you have told yourself day in and day out for the past 10 years of your life. You are fueling it. You are feeding that reality when you could be feeding into a different one. So what can we do, right? The Silver Magazine example give us a few examples, as well as the Cleveland Clinic, and I've just tossed a couple of them together that I thought were really important. And number one here is to find the root cause of your insecurity. Why is it that you really feel this way? And I really think that journaling can really help here. I think that it allows you to confront your thoughts in a gentler manner. You can lie to yourself in journals. I've heard of a lot of people doing that, but I think that the more consistently that you do it, the more honest you'll become. And so I invite you, think about, why am I feeling this resentment? What exactly about my circumstance do I really hate? What exactly about my circumstance do I dislike? And think about maybe how is this benefiting me? How is holding on to this benefiting me, right? Don't even necessarily think about how it's hurting you. We already know that it's negative to feel these emotions, feel this resentment, feel this anger, feel this bitterness. But how is it benefiting you? And can you find that benefit elsewhere? Now, the second thing is to practice gratitude. Gratitude and resentment are polar opposites. When I was finding it really difficult to accept that compliment, I was like, you know what? Damn, why did I say that? Why am I just rejecting these compliments? I need to just remain grateful. I'm like, you know what? Thank you for that compliment. Even though I'm not able to completely internalize it right now, it is so nice to hear that. Thank you so much. Gratitude is the total polar opposite to resentment, to bitterness, to self-sabotaging, right? If you are looking at your circumstances, you're like, wow, like I hate this reality, I hate my job, I hate this. Well, what do you like? Do you enjoy your breakfast that you eat? Do you enjoy your clothes that you wore, your jacket that you wore? Did you enjoy the movie that you watched last night? Can you make a dinner that you really enjoyed? What is within your control, and can you find gratitude in that? Gratitude is where true abundance lies. And honestly, the poorer of us, sorry if you can hear the rain, it is starting to torrentially downpour. So I do apologize about that, but gratitude is truly where abundance lies. The other thing is to practice self-compassion. Instead of fueling that negativity and saying, I don't even know why I'm feeling this way. How annoying is it that I'm feeling this way? Like, I don't want to be resentful. Like, I'm just so stupid. I'm a bad person. All of this stuff. Practice self-compassion. Feeling that negativity towards yourself is only going to keep fueling the negative spiral of your thoughts. If you're able to say, you know what, I still have a lot to learn. You know what, this is difficult. It's a difficult emotion to deal with. I know that this is just one of the lessons that I need to learn in this journey, and I'm going to be able to feel different emotions. I'm going to be able to surpass this emotion. Understanding that it is just a part of the journey is so powerful as well. And the last thing I want to leave with you is to find that action plan. What can you do? What can you shift? What can you pivot? It will help you stand out of your own way when it comes to your manifestations, but also when it comes to surpassing things that could be standing in the way of your growth, like resentment. But I think that's all I have for you guys today. Sorry if you can hear the rain. I did shut the window. That was kind of crazy. It is torrentially downpouring right now. It's a monsoon. But maybe it can be just like a washing away of our negativity, and then we're gonna come out of the storm, better than ever, right? So I will leave you guys with that. I'm so thankful that you guys came and clicked on this week's episode. Please, please, please let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like and subscribe, and please leave a review too if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcast. That would be amazing. Would really appreciate that. But yeah, don't forget to reach out at kalopsiapod, KALOPSIAPOD on Instagram and TikTok, and it's at Synejotita, SYDNEYDJOTITA on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And I am so thankful that you guys clicked on the episode. See you next Friday.